Hello, this is Gabi from Bluebonnet Crafters, and in this video I will show you step by step, or should I say row by row, instructions for weaving a jewel shaped weavie on the jewel loom, pin loom. If you are already familiar with continuous strand weaving, or you are familiar with weaving hexagons on our other turtle looms, you might want to take a look at the quick start guide. That's a little bit shorter and it just focuses on the parts that are relatively new, so that might save you some time to get going more quickly. This video is for, well, I'm not sure if it's the complete beginner, but new to jewel looms and new to continuous strand weaving, new to turtle loom people. All right, let's get started. What you will need is, of course, the loom, and this is the original Jewel R loom. Original Jewel, I call it original because it's the same shape as the original hexagon loom. They will work together. R stands for regular, which is our terminology to refer to worsted weight yarn. Today in this demo I'm using Caron Simply Soft, and because it's very good for demonstrations. You can use any worsted weight yarn that you like, whether it's wool or blends or acrylics or scrubby yarn or cotton. You have a broad variety of yarns available. You will need 7 yards to weave one jewel, which is enough for the weaving, and you will have tails, a beginning and an end tail, enough to weave the jewels together. All right, let's get started. Oh yeah, a word on the tool. The loom kits do come with a locker hook. I also like to refer it as 2-in-1 weaving tool, because on the one end it looks like a crochet hook. It's a little bit more, the hook is a little bit longer than a regular crochet hook, which makes it nice when you have to pull the yarn. And on the other end of the locker hook you have an eye of a needle, so which means you can use the same tool as a crochet hook or as a needle, which is all that you need to make to weave a jewel. Let's get started. And probably, let me see. So I zoom in as much as possible so that you can see as many details as possible. You probably noticed that I turned the loom around, and to get started, the hand that holds the weaving tool should be on the same side as the tip of the jewel. That's how you get started. All right. If you look at your loom, there are 2 pins that have little lines to them. There's one here and one on the opposite, and this is where we will get started weaving. There are also 4 pins that have little circles around them. 2 on the corners and 2 over here. And once we get to those, we will slightly switch weaving methods. The whole jewel is woven in continuous strand weaving methods, which means you work directly from your skein. And so there's no, it's really just one strand and you work directly from your skein. All right. So to get started, we will start at the pins that have those lines to it. To have enough tail to weave your jewels together, I measure twice the length of the loom, which will be plenty, so I'll show you. So this is like once and twice. It doesn't have to be like totally exact, but this gives you a good idea. And then you make a slip knot. If you're not familiar with making a slip knot, please Google it. There are a lot of quick videos that help you. Once you have that slip knot, you put that over the pin that has the line that's the farthest away from you. All right? And now you go around that pin facing towards the tip of the loom, and you guide the yarn to the bottom, to the other pin that has the line on it. And you go from the side of the tip around that pin to the side that has the straight edge and guide it back to the top. So in this video I will refer to the tip and to the straight side for directions. You come out here, so this is the pin with the line that has the slip knot over it, and you come out. Let me show you this a little bit closely. You come out here, or you go between the second and third pin from the top with your working yarn and go around that pin. Go around that pin towards, in the direction of the tip. And now we start weaving. So take your hook, go under the first row, over the second, and fetch the working yarn and pull it through. You go, excuse me, you guide the yarn over the first available pin on this side that has the tip, all right? And then you fetch the yarn and guide it towards the bottom. Go around and just slide it over the next available pin from the bottom center. So you see that your working yarn is still on the right here, okay? So now you take the working yarn and guide it over the next available pin on this side, or around I should say, like this, and go back to the top. Do you see what happened? So we wove here and then guided the working yarn down here, put it over this pin, and then skipped the center, went to this pin, and guided the working yarn back up here. And this pretty much is like working in the rounds. I'll show you again. So go around the pin, have the working yarn facing towards the tip, and this is when you start weaving, under, over, and you fetch the yarn, pull it through, go over the next available pin on the tip side, guide the yarn down to the next over the next available pin at the bottom here, hold the working yarn, go around the next pin across the center, and guide it back to the top. So the next round is done, and you probably notice you only weave here and then guide, and it copies the weaving down here, and you guide it up to complete the round. Make sure that I'm still in focus. Yes, I am. All right, and this is what we will be doing for a little while here. You can just watch me, or you can fast forward at this point. So I'm going around the pin. The working yarn is facing towards the tip. I start weaving under, over, under, over, under, over. Fetch the yarn. Next available pin on the tip side. Guide the yarn down. Next available pin on the tip side, but now closer to me or down in the picture that you're watching. The working yarn guides down, so across, you go across the weaving that you have worked. Next available pin, this one here, go around, guide the yarn back to the top and around that pin for the next row, facing, so the working yarn again is facing the tip. All right, under, over, under, over, under, over. Fetch the yarn, next available pin, guide it down. Working yarn is guided around the pin on the opposite side of the weaving and back to the top around the next pin. From the direction here is from the straight side, you go around pointing to the tip again. All right? Now, what do I have to do next? Yep, it's time to weave. Under, over, all the way across. Fetch the yarn. Next available pin at the top. Guide it down, next available pin at the bottom. Guide the working yarn around the next pin across and back to the top to complete the row. All right. Now, this time I will not say what I'm doing. You just say it out loud or watch. All right, you need it one more time. Weaving in the round. The working yarn is facing towards the tip. Under, over, all the way across. Fetching the yarn, pulling it through. And now you can actually start seeing here. I only pull it through once, and it weaves the top row, but at the same time you can see how the bottom row shapes here. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 weaving. You weave here at the top, but then it copies, see here the working thread, how it travels down. It copies the weaving here to the bottom. All right, now we go back to the top. Okay, few things here. Let's just do one more row. Under, over, all the way across. Pull the yarn through over the next available pin on the tip side. Carry it down on the tip side. Guide the working yarn on the straight side and bring it back to the top. So, few words here. You probably see that the yarn starts to arch a little bit. We will correct that, but the arching while you are weaving is very important because that will guarantee a better tension. If you weave too tight, you will have trouble once you work the last few rows. The tension will increase so much that it's really difficult to weave. So an arch like that will help you with the tension later on when you finish weaving your jewel. All right. Well, now you can see that you're running out of space, particularly here in the center. So when you have woven like 5, okay, I have 6 rows here, but if you have like 4 or 5, it depends on the yarn too, rows, just use the end of your weaving tool and slide in the weaving like that. You see that? It's almost a straight line, and you do the same here at the bottom. And just make a straight line. And now you have straight lines, so you can continue to weave, but it's also has a good tension. When you now touch your weaving, it has a less tension than it had before, and this will all go away while you continue to work the next rows. All right, so I use the tool here, particularly when the rows are, you know, short here. You can use a fork, or you can use a packing comb. Going forward, I'll probably use a packing comb for speed, and then you go back to weaving. Have you forgotten what you need to do? So the working yarn is here, facing towards the tip at the top, facing towards the tip, and then that's when you weave under, over, all the way across. Fetch the yarn, pull it through, go over the next available pin at the top on the side that has the tip, slide down the yarn to the next available pin at the bottom of the tip side, adjust your work yarn on the opposite side, go around the pin here at the bottom, and complete the round here. And if you want, you can now use a fork or any tool that you want, a packing comb, to pack your weaving. All right, we have a few more rows to do here, and I'll just assume at this point that you are experts, so I will just go ahead and weave those. Last round. You know when you're on the last round, let me just do, okay, pack this. You know when you have to weave one last round when you get to the pins with the circles here. So this one is the first one that you hit. If you hit this pin with a circle, that means you are ready for the last round, which does not mean that you are done, but it's the last round. And just over, under, over, under, over, all across, fetch the yarn, and you will see here that on that row you will hit the pins on this side with the tip that have the circles. Okay, so, and let's take a look here. Let's pack this nicely. So at this point, and if you hold this off here, you see it looks like a hexagon, and this is where the hexagon weaving method and the jewel weaving method are identical. So if you got to this part and you are new to turtle loom weaving, this is how you would begin to weave a hexagon, so you are an expert on that one at this point as well. Anyway, let's quickly review what's happening. We have woven in the rounds, and until we get to the pins that have the circles on it, okay? All the pins in between now have yarn around them at the top and at the bottom. And your working yarn comes out at the bottom of the straight side. All right? So, and now we are going to switch weaving methods. It's still continuous strand, but we will not go in the rounds anymore, but we will go in U shapes. Okay? And I'll show you how that works. You don't have to change anything else, just the weaving direction. So you start again weaving under, over, across. Remember that your working yarn is at the bottom of the straight line, of the straight edge. And you weave under, over, But now you go, see how the hook comes through here? You come through the straight edge here between the corner pin and the next pin, and this is when we will fetch the working yarn, and I'll show you how to do this. So push the hook through and then guide the yarn through the hook. I'll give you a tip right now, but we will look at that more closely later. I have the hook pointing towards the area that still needs to be woven. I'll explain later why that is important. So fetch the yarn, and so at this point the working yarn goes around that corner pin. And then you pull it through like this, and you put the yarn over the next available pin at the bottom of the tip side. So basically you just pulled the yarn through straight now here at the bottom of your weaving, and then you fetch the yarn and carry it up to the next available pin, still on the same side here, but next available pin on the top, and then you take your working yarn and go between the corner pin and the next pin at the top of the straight side. Okay, so, and you see that basically, so you wove here and then you carried it up and moved the working thread to the top. We started here with the working yarn at the bottom, now it's at the top, which means the yarn took a U shape. All right, and again you will see that it's woven here at the bottom, and then when you carry the yarn up, it's also woven at the top. So that's another 2 for 1, but you will now weave in U shapes and not all the way around anymore. So at this point your working yarn is here at the top, and you start weaving the next U. Under, over, all across, and you come out. Here's the working yarn, pin and hook. So working yarn, pin and hook. So the next space after the next hook is where the next space after the next pin is where your hook comes through. In other words, you just weave the yarn around the next pin. You fetch the yarn, carry it through, and now you go to the next available pin around the next available pin here at the top. You carry the yarn down over the next available pin, and then you carry the working yarn down. See the arches here? So I continue to work with those arches so that the weaving doesn't get too tight. And then you can use a fork or any tool of your choice to pack your weaving. Let's do this again. Under, over, all the way across. The working yarn is at the bottom, so that's where we will go. Next space after the working yarn is where we come through with the hook. And I'll show you now closer. So I have the hook facing, the hook is open towards the area that is still to be woven. Okay, then I fetch the yarn, and pull it through, over the next hook. Like this. And then carry it to the top. Like this. Carry the working yarn to the next available opening. Like this. Little arches, remember, and then pack. The reason why I put emphasis on where the hook points is particularly when this space gets tight, there's a good chance that you might twist the thread if you don't watch it, and I'll show you once we get a few more rows done. So basically from here on, that's all you need to weave under, over, all the way across. The work yarn is at the bottom, so I go into the space, the next space, free space to the working yarn. The hook is facing towards the area that still needs to be woven. Pull through, over the hook, carry up over the hook, guide the working yarn to the top, and pack. Working yarn is at the top, over, under, fetch the yarn. The hook is facing the open space, over the pin at the top, over the pin at the bottom, carry the working yarn down, and pack. You see it's already getting tighter. Next space, fetch the yarn, the hook faces, and this is where, you know, once you get here, this is like, okay, how do I have to twist the hook? You don't twist the hook, you could just go over here and over here, and then guide the working yarn on this side, and you see that I can show you a little bit closer. So here you just really lay them over those pins, and you can see that here the working thread is all parallel. It's not twisted. Okay, so for the last two rows, watching how the hook faces will be really useful to avoid that the yarn will twist. All right, and you see here, there's the hook that has the pin that has the circle around it, and you have seen that we have advanced our weaving here, which fills in the circle and also the center space here. And there's one more set of pins on the tip side, which means there will be one more U shape that needs to be woven. You probably already noticed that I'm at this point, actually from the very early beginning, I started weaving with my needle between those pins. That's the reason why we don't have a corner pin here, that you can use your tools to conveniently weave between the pins, which is particularly helpful on those last rows. But I actually started using, so basically where you weave is I started using it from relatively early on. Last row, the hook is facing the remaining opening. You pull it through, and just put it over the pin at the top, guide it over the pin at the bottom. All right, and you can see here that the two strands are still quite parallel. If you want, you can separate them, because we're done with the U-shape weaving, but now we have to lock in our weaving. So if you want to do a pin check, all the pins have yarn around them. Except one pin here on the straight side, the center pin, where the working yarn is. So that's the last one that's remaining that we still have to go around. We will weave one more row that will lock in all of what we have done so far. To do so, we measure the remaining yarn, and you just need to go like once across and a little bit for weaving in. But if you want to have a good measure for enough yarn to sew multiple jewels together, what I started doing is go around the loom once and to the end of the straight side here in the back, and then just snip it right there. Okay, if you want, you can still weave the way you have been weaving and just pull the yarn through, or you can now use the eye of the needle and thread your weaving tool so that you can use it as a needle. And to do so, you turn your loom around. So you will go around that one pin, and then you will weave between the last two rows. So this time you start weaving from the straight side, under, over, between those last two rows, and that will lock in. It will complete the fabric, and it will lock in your weaving, so that there's just no way it will unravel in any way. Pull it through. And here you go. All right. Now you can see the last row, but you can definitely at this point use your fork or your comb to just kind of stroke a little bit, so scratch your weaving a little bit and see how it even out. And it's the beauty of continuous strand weaving in general, because it's one. It doesn't have to be perfect, because it's one strand. It will wiggle itself into place even after you sew things together. All right, are you ready for the magic moment when you actually take your jewel off the loom? What I do recommend is that you hold it tip facing to you, and then from the back with your hands start pushing it off the pins from that end. Ta-da! Here you go. All right, you can release the slip knot that you made in the beginning, and then there's your jewel. Let's make it face like this. All right. All right, that's all there is to it. Congratulations on your first jewel. And as you can see, it's all continuous strand, just one very long string, a little bit woven into a jewel shape. If you still have any questions, please contact us. It can be as easy as just leaving a comment below this video, or you can contact us on the turtleloom blog or through Bluebonnet, or if you find Texas Gabi anywhere online, just ask. I'm very happy to help you. I've tried to cover as much as possible, but there still may be questions, and so please contact us. Oh yeah, there are a few things. Joining. If you look at the edges of the jewel, they are totally even and really ready to sew. All the jewel projects that I've done so far are with simple whip stitch, where you put two, let me put this in the right way, you put the sides together like this, and you can see how you can just sew with whip stitch through the matching loops. Okay, so it's really easy. Also, the edgings are perfect for crocheting. If you want to crochet, I do suggest that you crochet 3 and skip 1, because these sides have a little bit more stretch to it and you want to keep them straight. So if you crochet 3 and skip 1, and that's pretty much all there is to it. You can machine sew if you want. Yeah, that's actually pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the tour, and that you are now ready to weave your own jewels, and that you are now ready to make lots of pretty and practical things with pin looms.